Yo, what's good ever? And in today's video, we're gonna be playing free horror story animated stories, but it's Christmas and it's the Grinch. I don't know why, just why not? And let's just jump straight into it.
I'm a 78-year-old retired car salesman living in a suburban area of Chicago, Illinois. After my wife passed away, I moved in with my son and saw a lot of stuff
What the frick is going on with her teeth and her cheeks, lad?
I never would have expected. I just didn't want to be lonely. But my son knew I was hard of mobility and still put me up in the bedroom upstairs. I've basically lived in this bedroom, and for the most part I only get up to use the bathroom down the hall. But as much as I hate to say it, I guess I was too depressed after the passing of my wife to get on my son's back about letting me live downstairs. He would probably never budge anyway. He's got a job and a whole family of his own, so he's too busy to even think about the old cadre wasting away upstairs. Sometimes I wonder if they've all forgotten about me. They barely come into my room to talk to me anyway, and it's getting to be more and more that the people in my TV shows feel like closer friends than my own son and grandkids. They get so bored that I even spy on my neighbors just to have something to do. My bed is close enough to the window that I can see into their backyard without getting up. For a few years, I think I saw more of that family than I did my own. It was a middle-aged guy named Mike, who was living with his mother and sister. Well, I don't know who owned the property, but I figured it was Mike's based on what I ended up seeing happen there. I swear, those folks seemed nice on the outset. Nothing to evoke suspicion, just quaint, happy little lives that made me feel more comfortable in my own boring, bedridden existence. I'd seen them talk to each other on their back porch in the evenings or go out gardening in the mornings, and I never heard anything unusual for the longest time. That was until a couple years after I moved in, around Christmas time. I had just turned off the TV and was turning into sleep for the night when I heard people arguing.
Go to hell, you stupid tramp! You're a sorry piece of crap!
The voices weren't familiar, so I knew it was coming from next door. At some point, the shouting became screaming, and I started hearing all sorts of other noises going along with it. Doors slamming, glass breaking, loud thuds, the whole business. Then, it all just stopped. I was tired, so I assumed it was just an argument that ran itself out of steam. But I had a nagging feeling about it that played with my sleep. Some hours later, at what turned out to be 4 a.m., I was woken up by more noises. I looked out my window and saw Mike in the backyard. I had no idea what he was doing, but he was in a Grinch costume hauling some big Christmas sack to the tree by the garden shed. Then he opened the shed and grabbed a shovel and started digging, and I realized he was burying that bag in the frozen dirt. I didn't know what to think of it. It must have taken him an entire 30 minutes before he finished and went back inside his house. The only thing I could think was that he was some hyper-dedicated geezer playing the role of the Grinch, trying to hide some stolen donations from an orphanage or something. I don't know. I'd always thought he was a nice guy, so there was no explanation that sat right with me. I waited until morning to tell my son. Of course, he didn't believe me. He thought I was just a crazy old coot, and so did everybody else in the house. And with nobody to back me up, I started to believe them. I ended up brushing it aside and forgetting about it. The weird thing about it, though, was that I never saw the neighbor's mother ever again. She was the one who always tended the garden. But after all that happened, she was never there to take care of the plants. However, I still saw Mike and his sister outside on the porch from time to time, but they never looked quite as happy. After a while, everything went back to normal, until about 4 years later. After so much time, my son tried befriending his neighbors. He would always try to talk to them, but they would just give him a gaunt stare and say nothing, eventually going back inside their house. Both of them, the brother and sister, were definitely a weird bunch. But things got a little more disturbing right around Christmas, just like before. It seemed like it was happening all over again. There was shouting, then screaming, then a tussle and a thud, then a sudden silence. This time, I stayed up to watch. This all happening twice was way too strange for me to sleep on. It was right around 4 in the morning again. I stood up out of my bed to get a closer look out the window. I could see him coming out the back door. He was again dressed as the Grinch, dragging a big bag of something to the tree and burying it under the dirt. That's when out of nowhere, Mike turned his head and looked straight into my window. I quickly closed the blinds, but he had already seen me. A few minutes later, I couldn't help but peek. And what else did I see but the man himself in the window right across from mine, still in costume, glaring at me. I tried to act casual and play it off. So I opened the window and tried to make conversation across the way. Nice Grinch outfit. Thanks, buddy. Nice night out, too, isn't it?
Indeed it is.
So, what are you doing up so late? That's when Mike stares at me, not saying a word. Anyway, have a good rest of your night.
Merry Christmas.
Then, Mike waves his hand by, and in that moment, I saw a flash of blood soaked into the palm of his hand. Right away, he realized he made a mistake and tried to cover for it by closing the blinds immediately, but it was too late. I laid starkly awake all night after that, worried with anxious thoughts about what the reason for that bloody hand could have been from. The only conclusion I could reach was that he'd taken the life of his mother and sister and buried them in the backyard to keep it a secret. I didn't bother telling my son because I knew he would just brush me off, so I eventually called the cops. By morning, the cops were out in front of Mike's house, and he was immediately apprehended. Turns out that Mike's mother died in an altercation with his sister, and he helped her cover it up. Over the years, the sister had gotten ill and eventually died young. As for why he wanted to bury her in the backyard too, it was alleged that he did it for financial reasons. Just goes to show what people will do when money is tight. But if you ask me, I think the cops barely got half the truth out of that guy. I bet something way worse happened inside that house. The story was inspired by a downright terrifying incident that happened in Chicago, Illinois. Here's the photograph of the quote-unquote Grinch, a man named Michael who was 45 years old at the time. He has since been charged with concealing the deaths of the deceased family members mentioned in the story of his backyard.
It's always the ugly ones, I can't lie. What is this music, bruv?
It's been arduous raising my daughter as a single parent. After all, she was abandoned by her very own mother. Damn that hoe. When my daughter was only a year old, my wife left us for another man coming from an affluent family. So, every night, I prayed for that wretched witch to burn. However, the Christmas season is usually when I try to keep the darkness to myself and allow my daughter to enjoy the holidays. And so, on a Black Friday, I dropped by Walmart to buy a Christmas tree with my daughter. It was packed like hell, like vultures that only care about what they can get. Everyone grabbed appliances left and right. Some were pulling each other's hair, while others stepped on those lying flat on the ground, heedless of their screams. I scurried towards the tree section, where there were two large Christmas trees amidst a bunch of small shitty trees, and one of them seemed to have caught my eye. There was something about it that made it look a little more interesting than the rest, and so I went in for a closer look. However, as I started tugging on the leaves to check what material was used, I was cussed out, not by someone in pursuit of the tree, but by this enigmatic green person in front of me.
What the hell is your problem?
The man said as he shoved me to the ground. I'm sorry, man. You just blended in with the trees. I was going to buy the last big tree. Having a close resemblance to the Grinch, his brows furrowed, and with sharp teeth, he grinned and replied,
Well, whoever told you this was your tree? It's mine, you hear me? One step out of line, I'll grab some of yours and squish it!
As I got my bearings, I stood up saying, Excuse me? I didn't catch that. Did you say your tree?
That's right, Buster. So, if you're looking for a big one, then go get your tree from the forest!
Unable to tolerate this unfathomable behavior, I stood my ground, letting him know that I was determined to buy this tree. My little girl was frightened, her body trembling as she said,
Dad, can we go now?
Not yet, sweetie. This is only gonna take a minute.
Is that what you told your wife? Now get the hell out of my way!
The Grinch then grabbed me by my collar and slammed me across the floor, from one side to the other like a rag doll. Disorientated, I felt that if the
One more thing, make sure to like, subscribe and hit that bell, and I'm getting a new mic tomorrow, so when I get it, I should be sounding a lot better, just for you guys. So yeah, let's carry on with the video.
it would be the end of me. Hence, I hollered calling out to security, and when they finally came, I told them about the Grinch and how he violated my rights. There were 3 of them and just 1 of him, and so the security team warned him that if he remained conspicuous, they would have no choice but to report him to the cops and have him apprehended. It was evident that the man was furious and eventually walked away as he grumbled incomprehensibly. I couldn't help but feel victorious when I grabbed the last big tree and finally bought it. When we arrived arrived home, my daughter and I set up the tree
Oh,
together, and on
nah,
Christmas
he's not
Eve,
on
we
that
watched
chair.
a heartwarming film next to the fireplace as the fire popped and crackled. Then, while my daughter
Oh, my
waited
phone
for
dropped.
Santa to arrive, I noticed her head bobbing and eyelids slowly drooping.
What's
That's
that
when
guy
I
singing?
decided to take her to bed, convincing her that all her presents would appear underneath the Christmas tree the following morning. But this time, my daughter wasn't the only one yawning. I too was feeling drowsy, and so we headed back upstairs, tucking her in before returning to my bedroom, instantly hitting the sack. Later that night, I woke up to the sound of heavy footsteps coming from downstairs. But aside from the heavy steps, I heard screeching noises that gave me chills. What the hell was that? I muttered to myself. When I got up to check the time on my watch, I saw that it was 3 a.m. I couldn't go back to bed. Curious about the sounds, I got up and swung the door open. I noticed something odd coming from my daughter's room. The door to her bedroom was open, so I assumed she was the one making the noises downstairs. But then, I quickly realized that there was someone else down there when I heard a male's voice coming from the living room.
Stupid tree. Should have relinquished it while they had the chance.
The moderate tempo of my heartbeat accelerated as the noises grew disturbingly louder and more bizarre. Hence, I sprinted down the stairs and saw with my own eyes the same man I met at Walmart from before. It was the Grinch, with his filthy green complexion and sinister grin, and with him was a sack full of stuff he might have stolen from me. He carried it on his shoulder as he also dragged the Christmas tree toward the front door.
Hey, stop right there.
I hollered, making every attempt to intimidate him.
I'm armed. If you know what's good for you, put that down.
Then pull up! I dare you to square up, you little shit! This is my tree now! You ain't gonna ruin my Christmas this year, pal!
I gulped, afraid to get myself in trouble again, or worse, be killed. Hence, I allowed him to get away with it, hoping my surveillance cameras were all in good condition, so that I could provide enough evidence of this psycho barging into my home. As he drove off in his truck, I called the cops, telling them everything that had transpired. The worst part is that he didn't even have a license plate.
Damn it, all this trouble for a stupid tree.
I said in frustration.
Yeah,
I locked
fair
all
enough,
the
I see the
doors and
same,
waited
man.
for the cops to arrive. And once they came, they checked everywhere downstairs, including the rooms upstairs, in search of clues that could identify the suspect. Then suddenly, my heart sank upon noticing that my daughter was nowhere to be found. She wasn't in her room hiding, nor was she in the kitchen.
Lisa, honey, Lisa.
I frantically called out her name, but she never answered back. That's when I concluded that my daughter may have been in that sack the man was carrying on his shoulder. Of course, the cops promised to investigate and fill me in on the details. However, as time passed, the case went cold, and since then, I've had to spend Christmas alone with nothing but mere pictures to remind me of my daughter.
Alright guys, well, to be honest with you, I'm gonna be moving on to another one because these Christmas ones are just not scary at the minute. So I'm just gonna move on to the more scary ones. Well, I'll at least try and find a scary one just for you guys. So let me go check. One sec. Alright guys, I found a pretty good scary one just for you guys, so hopefully this one will do. Scary spirit. I don't like the spirit. Wait. Yo, what the f... No, this game. Alright. Let's get into it. And if you made it this far, just comment chicken nugget. Or comment LGB for my keyboard. Alright, let's get into the video.
An empty bottle of conditioner on my bathroom counter. I'd left it there a night or two ago, thinking it would remind me to get more on my way home. Luckily, I live about 5 minutes down the road from Walmart, so I stepped out for a quick trip, with only about 30 minutes left until they closed. Finding parking was easy in the middle of the night, but it gave me quite a different problem. Loitering in front of the store, eyeing me before I even got out of my car, was a creep. He was a strange, gangly man, looking as much like a zombie as he did a living person. His eyes tracked me without blinking as I made my way across the parking lot. I was
he's
hoping
a
the guy would
crack,
not
if you know
engage
what I
with
mean.
me,
I can't
but
see
that
on
was just
YouTube,
wishful
though.
thinking. Approaching the entrance, I did my best to keep my eyes forward and down to ignore him, but it didn't make a difference. At that critical range of about 20 or 30 feet, he called out to me and stepped closer.
No.
Excuse me, miss.
I'm sorry, but I don't have anything to spare.
Can I get a sample?
I said I don't... Wait, what?
You seem sweet and savory like a nice, thick piece of...
Hey, back off!
Before I knew it, the creep tried hugging me. Fortunately, I was quick enough to duck inside the store and get the attention of a few nearby people, including an employee, so they stared him down as I continued through, giving me a chance to put some distance between us. Brushing it off, I headed for the bathing aisle. I knew exactly where my conditioner was, so it should have been an easy grab and go. A minute tops. Of course, when I got to the shelf, my conditioner was either out of stock or replaced with something else, because it just wasn't there.
Just get a new
Annoyed,
one,
but
then.
determined to make the trip worthwhile,
Can't be getting
I looked
same on every
around for the
time,
next
bro.
best thing. As I
Smell
stood there
different,
weighing
innit?
my options, I got lost in all the different brands and scents and sizes, but I took my time. I was alone, or so I thought so I wasn't in anyone's way.
The man's gonna come for it. Yep, what
Then,
I'll say.
seemingly out of nowhere, I heard a sniff. At first, it barely
No,
registered.
no,
It was
no.
too quiet
Please
to
don't tip
pinpoint
down there.
exactly which direction it came from, but it still tipped me off. I wasn't as alone as I thought, even so late at night in a part of the store that's never very crowded. However, when I looked around, I didn't see anyone. I figured I had just heard somebody on the other side of the shelf take a whiff of a bottle of shampoo.
No.
I started
Behind
opening up to
you.
the idea of small talk with another woman, something to cleanse my palate from the previous interaction. Maybe I could make a joke or ask for a recommendation. Maybe they knew where to find what I was originally looking for. Sadly, that fleeting daydream vanished in the very next instant when I heard another sniff. This time it was louder, deeper, and unmistakably right behind me. My body froze in terror. I wrenched my neck to look over my shoulder, and there I saw that man that harassed me outside the store. He was crouched below my waist, burying his face into the back of my pants and sniffing my... I ran for my life.
what
Every
the
single
hell?
inch of my skin was crawling. Even as I frantically complained to the employees at the front, I was still unsure if I was going to throw up or not. But thankfully, I managed to hold it together. Moments later, security apprehended the freak and held him at the store until police arrived. A quick check of the security cameras revealed he'd been sneaking in sniffs of my butt for several minutes before I noticed,
what?
but at least it provided ample evidence to arrest him. Afterwards, I stayed in contact with the police. I wanted to do everything I could to make sure he never preyed on another woman again, but unfortunately, it was already too late for that. As it turns out, he was a registered offender from a conviction nearly 5 years prior to the incident.
what a
Even
weirdo.
worse, he had recently been caught multiple times for the exact
He's
same depraved
weird.
shit he was doing to me. It's clear he's never going to change and probably has no desire to do so whatsoever. The only good that came of this is that he has put away somewhere he will never be around women ever again. Ever since that night, my anxiety has been crippling. I can't stop looking over my shoulder,
Oh,
always
man.
expecting
Don't
to
kill me,
see
stop,
someone
man.
taking advantage of me.
It's
I don't
disgusting,
even want to
bro.
go outside unless I'm with someone I trust, and that number of people is smaller than it's ever been. On a more personal note, I am also now heavily triggered by my own body odor. No matter what it smells like or what part of my body it's coming from, whenever I smell myself, I get furious and terrified at the same time. I can't rest until I've scrubbed and rinsed myself raw, until I'm cleansed of whatever that sick freak wanted of me. A registered offender was arrested after he sniffed a woman's rear end. Police were dispatched after a report of someone loitering in the women's department. Their investigation led them to a nearby Walmart, where they used the store's surveillance system to track
that's
a man
weird,
following a female
bro.
customer. The officers watched as the suspect followed the woman, crouched behind her, and engaged in lewd behavior by inappropriately sniffing her bottom. The suspect was 38-year-old Khalees Caron Croder, who we previously made a video on for an eerily similar incident at a bookstore, so be sure to check that
Why
out.
do his ears look fake, G? Especially this one.
Crowder has a documented history of
Alright, we don't need this. I'm not hearing that. Well, thank you guys so much for nearly 60 subscribers. It generally, and I mean it, means the world to me. Thank you so much. Well, thank you guys for watching so much. Make sure to hit that bell, post notifications, and yeah, peace.